Bonjour à tous! France is a country with many iconic symbols. We all recognize La Tour Eiffel, l'Arc de Triomphe, et les Champs-Élysées. For us Francophiles out there, though, we appreciate La Marianne, the personification of France, and Le Coq, the courageous and combative sport rooster. And who doesn't know about les baguettes and les croissants? In the early 20th century, the city of Paris acquired another iconic food symbol, les macarons. We can thank Italian Catherine de' Medici for introducing macarons to France during the 16th century, but La Durée is the Frenchman who made them famous during the late 19th century and is the basis of the modern versions we eat today. If ever in Paris, strolling down the Champs-Élysées, be sure to stop in La Durée, the famous macaron shop, and purchase a few. I'm excited about today's bake. Macarons are, at its core, just a simple almonds meringue cookie sandwich, a crunchy outside with a soft marshmallow interior with all sorts of yummy goodness sandwiched in the middle. They really are a puffy cloud of sweetness. They are totally gluten-free too. Macarons, while simple, are truly an oxymoron of a bake. We're talking super simple ingredients, only 4, yet incredibly technical, enough to make you want to scream or cry at different points in the preparation and bake. After trial and error on multiple occasions, I've modified recipes and techniques until I've found what worked for me as a home baker. I'm sharing those with you today. I'm treating you today with a French macaron 3 ways: a simple version, an elegant version, and an indulgent version. I can't wait. Let's take a look at the ingredients. The 4-ingredient authentic basic French macaron only consists of egg whites, granulated sugar, superfine works best, superfine almond flour, and powdered sugar. For additional flavor and color of my 3 versions, I'm adding extracts, almond or vanilla, cocoa powder, and food coloring. For the fillings, my simple version called Almond-Strawberry Macaron only consists of strawberry jam or preserves or any jam you prefer. First of all, we're going to need to do a little bit of prep for this recipe. You're going to need 2 egg whites that I've already prepped and put in a bowl, and you're going to need 1 for each recipe. So I'm showing you 3 versions today. It's a total of 6 eggs, 6 egg whites, mind you. But if you're just making 1 recipe, you only need 2. It's really important to age your egg whites. You need a minimum of 24 hours to a maximum of 3 days that you let your egg whites hang out at room temperature, covered in a glass bowl and on the counter. I've aged mine for 2 days actually. So my eggs are ready to go for my 3 recipes, but all you would need would be 2 egg whites per batch. Before you begin on baking day, you need to prepare your pans, and you're going to need at least 2 pans per batch. So you need a cookie sheet, you're going to need a piece of parchment paper where you have drawn about 1.25 inches to 1.5 inch circles, 1 inch apart. I have already done that on my parchment paper. You could find templates online with circles and just spread them out as long as they're 1 inch apart, or you can do what I did and just use this old-fashioned childhood compass and just made sure mine were pretty equally spaced and circles were pretty accurately at 1.25 inches. So then you're just going to line your cookie sheet. Now, because I used pencil to draw my circles and this is parchment paper, you can see through it. I'm going to turn my parchment paper upside down because I don't want the lead from my pencil to get into my food. So then you just put your parchment paper on your cookie sheet, and notice you can still see my circles through the parchment paper even though they're on the bottom. And then you will stack and bake yours in the oven on 2 sheets. That's why you need 2 sheets, because you're gonna make 1 pan at a time, but in another cookie sheet so that we don't burn the bottoms of our cookies. You can also find the silicone mats online, like on Amazon, that have the circles on there that are equally spaced and the right size. Since macarons are such a technical bake that require accuracy, I highly recommend you using a food scale. However, I will give you approximations in cups as we go. So first, we're gonna have to pulse our almond flour and powdered sugar together. And since I'm gonna use my scale, you wanna just place them in a bowl. Got mine tare to 0. We're going to weigh our ingredients into grams. So I'm gonna first put 50 grams of almond flour into my bowl, and that's about 1/2 cup. So that's not a lot. To the almond flour, I'm gonna tare back to 0, and we need 125 grams of powdered sugar. So about a full cup. So now that my almond flour and powdered sugar are measured out, we're going to put them in a food processor. And the purpose of pulsing these is to get all the clumps out. Macaron batter is a very smooth batter, and it shouldn't have any lumps whatsoever. So I'm using a little mini chopper here. You could use the regular size one if you want. And we're just going to let it run until everything has been pulsed together and smooth. All right, since we're talking about having a smooth batter, guess what? We're also gonna sift this. So we're not giving this mixture any chance of becoming lumpy at all for our batter. So this is a very thick combination between powdered sugar and almond flour, and it takes a little bit to sift it. It's not like regular flour, because almond flour tends to be a little coarser, right? So I found the easiest way is just to take a spatula and then just move your spatula around in your sifter, and it'll pull down all of the parts that we want. Now you're gonna have a little bit of coarse almond flour left over, not much, a few granules, and we're just going to discard that. Take a look at our mix. And notice we do have a little bit of almond flour left over. I'm actually just going to put it down my sink. It's time to whip the egg whites. Now, I find a stand mixer very useful here, but you could also use a hand mixer. It's whatever you have access to. Just ensure that all of your utensils and bowl are very clean, as any oil or moisture will impede the whipping. So go ahead and attach your whisk, and then here's our bowl of 2 egg whites. So we're just gonna pour our egg whites into the bowl. Whisk the egg whites on medium speed, which for me and my KitchenAid mixer is about the level 4, until they're frothy. Okay, notice that our egg whites are frothy. So now's the time that we want to increase the speed to closer to high, which will be at the number 6 to 8 on mine, and we're gonna slowly add in our 50 grams of sugar that I've just measured out, and it's about 1/4 cup. We're gonna let this go for about 5 minutes until stiff peaks. Just gradually add in your sugar. Okay, notice it's still pretty runny. We don't have any stiff peaks showing yet. All right, let's take a look. Oh, the peak has curved at the top, so we know it's not ready. And we're also looking for a big mass ball in this whisk. Then we'll also know that it's ready. All right. Notice that big ball in the whisk. When you pull the whisk up, if you look at the trails left behind, if the peaks do not curve and they stay straight up, then it's ready. And I'm not seeing any curving of our peaks, so this is ready to go. So notice our meringue is nice and stiff. We're going to pour that into a large bowl, because this is where we're going to add our almond and powdered sugar mixture, and where we're going to mix it all up and fold. So you could probably just mix in your mixer stand, but I wanted a bowl that's a little bit wider, that's easier for me to fold better. So I'm using a separate bowl. So now we have to sift a second time the almond sugar flour. Place that back into our sifter, and just like we did before, it's easier to sift it the second time around because it's already really broken up. And as we did before, if you have a little extra left over, just discard it. So as we mix this up, we want to carefully fold in the egg whites. With a rubber spatula is the best. And so to do that, you're actually going to make a figure 8. You're going to start with the outside, and then you're going, as you get to the center, then you're going to cut your spatula down the center, and that's the fold. So we're going to do this 40 times, and then we are going to count, because this is pretty finicky batter here, because we don't want to deflate it so much. It has to be the perfect batter consistency when we put it on the tray. So that's 1. So that's 2. Okay, I'm 20 folds in. Take a look at that. You can definitely see it's working. Again, we're not stirring, it's just a simple fold. All right, I'm 40 folds in. This is where I'm gonna stop for the moment. So take a look. It's getting a little bit looser than it was. So this is where we're gonna stop for a moment, because this is our first batch. And this is what I call my simple version, the Almond-Strawberry Macaron. Here is where you would add the food coloring or extracts if you wanted to. Now, if you want to use a simple version and do no more than what we already have here, you could totally do that. It'll be a great meringue with just the almond flour and the sugars and the egg whites. That's it. But if you want to add a little flavor to it, then for these macarons, I'm going to add 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract. You could use less if you're not a huge fan of almond extract, or just don't put it in there at all. But I find 1/4 teaspoon is just right for me. And then we're going to put a healthy dose of red food coloring, and this will actually make it pink. This is gel. You really don't want to use wet food coloring because it will add liquid to your meringue and that'll cause it to deflate even more and be too runny. So just take a look. I'm going to put a nice dollop of red in there. Once we mix the red with the white meringue, it should become a pink. So we've done 40 folds. So we're going to fold an additional 25 to 35 times. We're going to get a total of 65 to 75 folds, and we'll see what that looks like in a minute, so you'll know what the meringue should look like before we put it in our piping bag. Okay, so I'm at 65 and I want you to take a look at it. So there's still a little bit of white in there, but the main thing you're looking for is when you scoop up the meringue and you let it fall. If it looks more like this thick ribbon, sort of lava thickness, then you know that you're pretty much there. So as we let this fall, and as we make the ribbon, okay, got that little ribbon going there. Okay, we're gonna let this sit for a few seconds, and if the ribbon sort of oozes down into the batter, then we know it's ready. Because that's how the French get the soft, smooth tops. The batter goes back into itself after you've piped. And it is oozing back into the batter, so we're ready. Now's the point where we transfer the batter to a pastry bag that's fitted with 3/8 to 1/2 inch tip. If you don't have one, then do what I'm doing. So I'm using a glass to hold the batter, and I'm putting the corner, the tip of a gallon-sized bag at the bottom, and then I'm going to fold the top over this glass because we're going to be snipping off that tip and we want the batter to be at the tip area, right? So then just take your batter, scoop it in to your bag. All right, so now our batter is contained in the bag, right? So then go ahead and get your cookie sheets ready. So you're probably gonna need 2 cookie sheets with 2 parchment paper that's prepped. All right, and then we're gonna snip off the end of my bag here. You wanna do a straight across snip. We don't want an angle because we don't want our cookies coming out at an angle. You're gonna squeeze in the center of your circle. Squeeze until it covers the entire circle. We smoothed out the batter enough, then that means here, any swirls that are at the top as we're forming our cookies should also seep back down into the batter. Once you start piping, you don't want to stop. You want to bang your cookies on a counter because we're trying to get rid of those air bubbles. We no longer have a curl at the top when we lifted our piping bag. It's smoothed back down into the batter. We're going to let these cookies sit at room temperature just like this. We're not going to cover them. We're not going to touch them. We're just going to leave them here. We want to wait until they're matte, they look dry, and they're not sticky to the touch. So depending on your environment, it could take 15 minutes, it could take an hour or longer. It all depends on humidity. Humidity is your worst enemy in this step. Drying out the cookies is super important in getting that fuzzy feet that we see on the bottoms of the macaron. Check them about every 15 to 30 minutes, and when they look dry and they're no longer sticky, then they're ready to go in the oven. Let's prepare our oven while our macaron continue to dry out. So in your oven, you're going to place the bottom rack in the lower 3rd position, and then you're just going to set your oven to 350 degrees. Okay, the oven's preheated. I'm actually going to drop the temperature down to 325 degrees. The ideal temperature for macarons is usually between 300 and 350 degrees. So notice the macarons, they're dried out. I mean, you can tell when you touch them, the tops, there's no stickiness. They look matte, which is what they should look like, and they're ready for the oven. So we're going to bake 1 pan at a time. And so since I'm using my 2 pans right now, this works for me because the other batch is already dry. They just slide right off onto the counter, and then I can use this pan as my double pan for my first batch of macaron. So we're going to put them in the oven. We're going to set the timer for 7 minutes. Now, if you turn your oven light on, about the 5-minute mark, you should start seeing the feet on them, the pieds, that little bottom to them, and that's traditional of macaron. The timer just went off, so we're going to drop the temperature to 300 degrees, and we're going to rotate the pan around and put them in for another 6 to 11 minutes until they're dried out. The timer has gone off. I put them in for another 9 minutes. So mine took a total of 16 minutes to cook. This is how you know when they're done. First of all, can you see the beautiful feet on them? The little spongy looking bottoms. If you can take the tops and you shake them and they don't move at all, that means they're done. If they're too wet, if they're shaking and you take them out, that means the bottoms are going to stick to the parchment paper. There are these tricks that you could put boiling water under the paper before you remove them. That somewhat works, but I haven't had as much luck with that. Just make sure they're done. We're gonna let them cool for a few minutes before we remove them from the pan. Since we're going to put our second batch in the oven in a moment, we wanna raise the temperature of the oven back to 350 degrees. When it goes off and is preheated, then we can put the next batch in and drop the temperature to 325. So go ahead and set your oven back to 350 degrees. I'm gonna let mine continue to cool on a wire rack. And so an easy way to remove them is just to pull them off so that now we're ready to put our second batch on the cookie sheet. Okay, now these are gonna go into the oven. Our simple macaron has been cooling for a while. I want to take off some of them and let you see what the bottoms look like. So they're going to slightly stick to the paper, but you could always use a knife and just run it underneath it, and it should come off without any stickiness to the bottom. That tells you that they are done. If they're sticky, that means they didn't cook long enough. And notice I don't really have anything on the paper. When it comes to filling the macaron, you can be as simple or as complex as you would like. You could just eat the meringue cookies as they are. They're gonna be crunchy, but they'll have that nice marshmallow softness in the center. I just sort of paired them up by size. Take maybe a teaspoon of your favorite jam. I'm just using strawberry jam here for my almond base cookie. Just put like a little dab in the center, and then take your top and just sort of twist on, and you get a nice little sandwich. That's it. This is the simple version of making meringue cookies. I like to place my sandwich cookies in a casserole dish and cover them and leave them in the fridge. They're best when you leave them in the fridge for 24 hours so that the filling softens the both ends of the cookie, and so when you take that bite, you have that crunchy exterior and that soft and chewy interior. But there's no reason why you couldn't take a bite earlier if you wanted to. So then you just do these for the rest of your cookies. Now you know how to make a basic batch of macaron. Let's check out my second batch, the elegant version known as the lavender and honey. My elegant version, called Lavender-Honey Macaron, consists of mascarpone cheese, honey, and dried food-grade lavender. Whip 2 egg whites with sugar until stiff peaks, just like the simple version. Combine powdered sugar and almond flour in a food processor and then sift, discarding any remaining particles. After 40 folds, add a 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract and equal parts of blue and red food coloring for that lavender color. Fold an additional 25 to 35 times until the batter resembles lava flowing and seeps back down into the batter. For our elegant lavender and honey macaron, we're gonna need some food grade lavender, and we're gonna use a teaspoon of that. Mine is not ground yet, so I'm gonna ground mine using a mortar and pestle. This reminds me of France, hands down, particularly in Provence area, because Provence is where you see all the lavender fields that are in bloom, and they usually pick them before July 15th, because after that, then the lavender dies. We're gonna add 2/3 cup of mascarpone cheese, which is an Italian cheese. It's like cream cheese, but it doesn't really taste like cream cheese. It's a little bit different, but I don't think I would use cream cheese for this. I think I would stick with this one. And I like to spray my utensils if I'm gonna have something creamy or sticky in them. That way they come right out. All right, so that's our 2/3 cup. And hardly any stick because we had our spray in there. To that, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of honey. And again, I like to spray my utensil here. Of course, notice how quickly and easily it comes off of the spoon once you've sprayed it. And we have our nice lavender. This is not going to color the cheese mixture purple like you might imagine. So it's still gonna have more of a creamy color to it than the cookies themselves. Pour that in there. And then just mix it up. And that's our cream. That's it. That's our filling for this elegant version. See, it's still simple. There you are. Just a nice little creamy, sweet mixture. Now let's decorate our lavender and honey cookies. Let's make our third and final batch, the indulgent version, the one that I dearly love, the chocolate ganache macaron. My indulgent version, called chocolate ganache macaron, consists of whipping cream, semi-sweet chocolate, granulated sugar, and butter. For the almond flour and powdered sugar mixture, you're going to sub 17 grams of almond flour with cocoa powder. Whip 2 egg whites with sugar until stiff peaks, just like the simple version. Fold 40 times and then add a half a teaspoon of vanilla. Fold an additional 25 to 35 times until the batter resembles lava flowing and seeps back down into the batter. For our chocolate ganache, you're gonna need whipping cream, butter, sugar, and semi-sweet chocolate chips. So first of all, we need to heat up our whipping cream. You can do this over the stove or you can put it in the microwave. I'm just gonna put it in the microwave. You need a half a cup. Careful, because we do not want to bring this to a boil. We just want to heat it to it's just under a boil. While our milk is heating up, we need to weigh out 4 ounces of chocolate. So 4 ounces is gonna be approximately 3/4 of a cup. It's definitely bubbly, but it's not boiling. It's not bubbly boiling, but it's getting close. My chocolate chips are at room temperature, so that means they'll melt easier. So that's what we're doing. We're making the chocolate ganache. And so we just want to pour the hot milk over the chocolate chips, let it sit for a couple of minutes so that the chocolate chips hit that heat and will melt. And then all we're gonna do is add a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of butter to that so that it gives it just that nice sweet richness. It'll make it glisten, and the butter will help it harden quicker too and keep it hardened as it sits. Okay, let's see how soft our chocolate is. Yep, it's nice and soft. All right, so I just put a tablespoon of sugar in this little container, so I'm gonna pour that in there. And then we're gonna do a tablespoon of butter. I'm gonna eyeball that. Pretty sure that's a tablespoon. Good enough. It's just butter. Butter didn't hurt, right? I'm gonna switch to a whisk just because I think that's gonna really smooth it out, because we want this to be a nice smooth chocolate. So this is gonna be fantastic when we beat it to make it a nice silky smooth ganache. Looks like frosting. And then we'll put that on our chocolate cookies. So we're gonna place our chocolate ganache in the refrigerator for 30 minutes. We want it to set up a little bit because then we're gonna whip it with a mixer and it'll be nice and fluffy like frosting. Okay, let's decorate the chocolate ones. So we've got our fluffy ganache that we made. Now you could put the ganache in a piping bag if you wanted to, and then just pipe it onto the cookie just like we piped the actual cookies themselves onto the parchment paper. It's up to you. My thoughts on this are, you're gonna cover it anyway, the piping, so it's not like a cupcake where you actually see it, the top of it. So I think this is probably good enough as long as you've got that nice cream in the center and you can see it. I think that works just fine. So let's get the rest of these filled. Simple almond strawberry, elegant lavender and honey, and indulgent chocolate ganache. All right, let's cut into them first. You should leave these in the refrigerator overnight for 24 hours. It's got that marshmallow inside with a crunchy outside, and that's what we're looking for in those. So while you should wait at least 24 hours for them to be in the refrigerator to soften up before eating them, you can eat them when you make them. Why not? You can store them up to 5 days in the fridge or in the freezer for 4 to 5 months for longer storage. Thaw them for 30 minutes prior to eating them from the freezer. Let's get a taste. I'm gonna start with the simple. This is the Almond-Strawberry. It has that crunchy exterior. I love almond extract, so I can taste that almond in the cookie. And then of course, strawberry jam. It's so easy and yet has such good flavor. I think the strawberry and the almond extract go great together, along with the almond flour that's in the cookie. That's a good one. And it has that chewy interior, just like what a macaron should have. All right, now let's try the elegant version. This is the Lavender-Honey. I really like that lavender. It really does remind me of France so much. It takes me back to when I had lavender ice cream in the Luberon region of France. Stopped for lunch one day. It was middle of July, had lavender ice cream for dessert. It was wonderful. This reminds me, this takes me back to that. And of course with the cream, oh, the cream and the lavender, you definitely can get into that lavender. And the almond extract is not very strong at all in this. They're both strong flavors, but they balance each other out. That's a good one. This is definitely an elegant cookie. Definitely very French. We have the last one, which is the Indulgent one. I can definitely feel that marshmallowy, chewy texture on the inside. So once these sit in the fridge for a few hours, oh, they're gonna be wonderful. But the flavor, it's chocolate. You can't go wrong with chocolate. And ganache, I mean, hello, butter, sugar, semi-sweet chocolate chips. Yes, please, along with whipping cream. Yeah, if you love chocolate, you're gonna absolutely love this one. So there you have it. Simple, elegant, and indulgent to fit your taste buds or your loved ones. There are lots of macaron recipes and tips online. Macarons are finicky depending on the quality of ingredients and your environment. If you're looking for a dessert food challenge, give this one a try and leave a comment below. They are a great dessert for any time of the year, and I had a lot of fun learning to make these and figuring out tips that work for me as a home baker in my kitchen. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel, like, share my videos, and leave comments below. I would love to interact with you, so leave me some comments and let's interact together. Jusqu'à la prochaine, allez faire cuire le monde. Ciao!